Hello, welcome to this session of empowerment, the key to succeeding as an evolving assistant. This is one of my favorite sessions and topics to present and to share. And so I look forward to spending the next hour with you to really do a deep dive into this often misunderstood term of empowerment and what it really is all about for assistants. So grab your pen and your paper or your laptop or whatever you're going to do to take some notes and listen for those nuggets. Those things that are particularly relevant to you personally in whatever role or situation or workplace environment you currently find yourself in. If you are absolutely in between jobs right now, that's okay too, because in order to step into the world of interviewing, you definitely want to understand empowerment and what it's all about. So let's go ahead and dive into our content today. The first thing I want to talk about is just a little bit about what the objectives are. So, what are our objectives today? Our objectives today. First of all, I want you to be open-minded to new ideas. Don't be afraid to ask yourself some questions or even ask questions and follow up with me if you're listening to this on demand or after the fact. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My email will be at the end on this last slide. And you are more than welcome to reach out to me via email and we can talk about any of the items that I cover in today's workshop. So again, listen for those nuggets. You're going to gain momentum. That's what we're all looking for, right? We want to gain momentum in our roles wherever we might be right now. It's also going to help you build some confidence. I also want you to think about the objective of really tapping into self awareness, what that really means for you, and not to be afraid of diving into a little bit more of really honest and candid self awareness. And we'll talk more about that as we get into the material. And then you're going to learn some new strategies and tools. And who doesn't love that, right? I am a huge ambassador for never ever getting complacent as an administrative professional. So we really want to understand the power behind learning new strategies and just new skills and new ideas. So, what do you want to gain today? What might be your personal objective for today? Maybe you're just wanting to get out of a little bit of a rut. Maybe you're feeling a little stuck. Maybe you are really struggling a little bit with your partnership with your executive. I'll touch on that as well. Maybe you're feeling like, gosh, is this really the right job for me? So, whatever it is that you're in the middle of for yourself, that's okay. You want to be really listening for those nuggets that will touch you and help you to be successful. So, with that, I always like to start with this particular slide, this one and the next two, actually. When we talk about self awareness, it is such a powerful aspect of being a successful executive assistant or administrative professional. Really knowing ourselves is the beginning of all wisdom. It's essential to step back and recognize what your part is in any given situation. For example, maybe you are struggling with your partnership with your executive. So, what's your part in that? What could you be doing a little differently, a little better? And we'll again talk more about this as we go through the material, but it's just a little bit of a teaser right now. I really love this quote by Aristotle. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. So with that, we don't want to be like the ducks with our heads stuck in the water all the time and just assume that it's everyone else's responsibility to fix things or to make your life easier or make your job easier. We want to keep our heads above water and really be aware and in touch with what's going on around us. So that's why I always like to include this slide as well, this photo. Get our heads out of the water and really pay attention to what's going on around us. And then we have to be willing to do the work. Wow, this one's super important because if we're not willing to step back, A, and recognize, B, what we should or could do in order to really step into this space of empowerment and be willing to maybe make those tweaks or recalibrate a little bit or take on a new habit or maybe get rid of a not so good habit in our daily work life, we do have to be willing to do the work. It's not always about everybody else doing the work, right? And I don't mean work like the tasks we're given in the office. I'm talking about the personal work, the personal adjustments that we need to make within our personalities, our characters, our professional image, whatever that looks like. As we get through this content, at the end, I'll come back to this and hopefully you will have gained some insights into what you might need to do in order to be more successful as an evolving assistant. All right. You might not know what this is a picture of, but I always like to kind of introduce the topic of empowerment with this idea of the fact that you are never a finished product. This is a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. San Francisco, if you've never been there, is one of the most beautiful cities. And the Golden Gate Bridge has a very interesting story around it when it comes to the color of it and how it is continually in the process of being painted. In other words, when they paint the Golden Gate Bridge, they work their way from one end of it to the other, uh, and then they turn around and go back and go the other direction because by the time they get it painted going one way, it's time, because it doesn't take just a day or two, right? It's time to turn around and go back and paint it again. So that's why I love this visual, because we want to think of ourselves as like this Golden Gate Bridge, that we are never a finished product. There's always things that we can, tweak or learn or maybe do a little differently or do a little better, or a best practice that we can, put in place. Um, a new principle that we can apply. So many different things that we can do. So we're never a finished product. Don't ever think that you have gotten to the epitome and the pinnacle of being an executive assistant. We can be really good at what we do. I consider myself to be very good at what I do, and I've evolved and I've gotten confident in a lot of the areas of being a successful EA. But I've never gotten to that point where I feel like I'm there, I'm done, I got nothing left to learn. No way. That is such an important aspect of empowerment. So, with that said, then let's go ahead and dive in. One of the things I like to start with is talking about the SWOT analysis. Now, I put my own spin on this, but it really does basically come from the idea of the SWOT, which stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now, normally the SWOT exercise is used as part of a strategic planning process. It's a very well-known exercise that a lot of companies do when they are in the yearly strategic planning process. They'll go through this exercise and, fill in the boxes and figure out what their market strengths are, what the current industry weaknesses are, what their opportunities are within the market and within the company, and what the current threats are. So my spin on it is a little bit different. I like to think of it as assets, gaps, opportunities, and threats. Now, I'm not sure that there's a really cool acronym that I can put together for that, but we're going to go through it all the same. So, your assets are all those things that you do really well. it's these are the things that just you know that you've kind of mastered. You may not be perfect at it, but that you've kind of mastered. Those are your strengths. Those are the things that help you to shine. Those are the things that you got hired for because you stood out. Maybe you are just a pivot table whiz. Maybe you have mastered the prompts of AI. Maybe you have really gotten to the point where you understand and how to take board minutes like nobody's business, right? Maybe you are, calm under pressure. Maybe you are a great team leader. All of these assets, these are the things that you bring to the workplace every day, that you bring to your role that set you apart. And then there are the opportunities. Now, the opportunities, don't assume that these are things, simply like a promotion. Let's look at it a little differently. Opportunities could be projects. It could be an opportunity to be a mentor. It's an opportunity to maybe learn a new skill, to shadow another higher level EA if you're looking to maybe get into the corner office or support a CEO. Wow, there might be an opportunity there for you to potentially job shadow a higher level EA. Um, the next one is gaps, and I don't really like the word weakness, so I usually I replace this with the word gaps. So what are the gaps? The gaps are, those areas that we need to fill. Those are the areas that maybe we're just not quite as confident in. Maybe we need to think about getting a certification in a particular software program. Maybe you don't feel as confident doing any public speaking. Maybe it's about, doing whiz bang presentations. You're not real confident in putting together a super duper slide deck for a meeting. Any of those gaps, that's what you want to fill in here on the SWOT analysis. And then the threats, those are the obstacles. They're not necessarily the typical way we would think of a threat, right? They're the obstacles. What's in your way? And a lot of times, these are things that are self inflicted. So these are things that, you know, keep us from having the confidence to reach out to a higher level EA and ask them to be your mentor or asked to job shadow. Um, be willing to be very, very open and honest with yourself about what those obstacles are. What is preventing you from really stepping into that space of empowerment and kind of, spends time thinking about what's holding you back? Now, it could be things like maybe your executive isn't utilizing you as well as you think he or she could. That's could be an obstacle, but it's also an opportunity. So I would encourage you to take some time to fill out this SWOT analysis. Take some time to really dive into, your assets, your gaps, your opportunities, and your obstacles. This is always a good exercise to do because it sets the foundation. It's your baseline. It helps you identify those areas for refinement. It helps you know where you shine, what's in front of you that may require additional learning, a different, maybe some conversation, maybe certification, maybe a training, whatever it might be. So spend some time doing this on your own. It's an easy exercise to create yourself. It's just 4 boxes, and you could make it as nice as you want and then just kind of keep it somewhere where you can refer to it on a regular basis. And what you want to do then is you want to use that as your compass. You want to just pay attention to it so that as you're, navigating through your career, you refer back to that SWOT analysis and those areas, and you're thinking about it on a regular basis. They can change over time. Don't get locked into feeling like, oh, well, if I do it once, that's it. No, I usually do this yearly. And so it's just a great exercise to do. It really can be your compass, and you want to come back to it and re examine, review it, reevaluate. Where's your mindset? Where's your attitude? Where are your habits? Have any opportunities been fulfilled? Have any obstacles? Are they the same obstacles that you included a year ago? That's where this exercise becomes very, very useful. So I would encourage you to use it. All right, so let's talk then about empowerment. What is it? I really think it is one of the most misunderstood words for executive assistants. I think oftentimes, and this comes from many, many, many conversations that I've had over the years, when people come up to me after a conference session and say, "Gosh, Lisa, I, my boss doesn't do this. My executive won't let me do this," and just go through this list of things that they're not happy about. And I think sometimes that assistants feel like empowerment is given to them. That's the idea behind empowerment, that someone else has to empower us to do things. But let's examine it a little bit closer. We have to be able to give ourselves permission to succeed. And the guidance and the support of others is the invitation to then take that permission and empower ourselves to take action on doing something with it. So that's where it gets a little bit fuzzy. It's not going to come in a FedEx box or an Amazon box on your doorstep. That's just not empowerment. It's not how it works. And I think that's where assistants often get hung up. Someone else can give us the autonomy or the permission to take on a project, or take on a complicated task, but unless we're willing to step into it and have the confidence to take action and create a plan and figure it out and use some critical thinking, that's empowerment. It comes from us. It comes from inside. And so, what does it look like for you if I were to ask you for a word association? What word would you come up with if I said, okay, what does empowerment look like? So here are some words that I have received when I've done this workshop live. Confidence, obviously. Authority. Prepared. Valued. Strength. Support. Initiative. Self-confidence. Freedom. I love that one. Self-reliance. Green light. Aren't those great words? And I'm sure if I gave you a few minutes, you could jot some down that come to mind for you. Um, we can see empowerment, right? It's just that oftentimes we don't know how to feel it. And I think sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit as assistants. I think oftentimes we are feeling empowered. We just don't know it. We just don't know it. We don't understand it. All right. So I like to think of it as a process. So to me, empowerment is a process. It's similar to traveling on a path or a journey. So look at this great, path going through the meadow, heading towards the beautiful misty mountains, right? It's not a one-time thing. Like I said, it's not going to come in a box on your doorstep. It is a process that comes through self-awareness, doing the work. I'll keep going back to that, and recognizing, having those aha moments and recognizing that it's okay to take that invitation and dive into it and be willing to make a mistake, be willing to take the risk, be willing to do the work. Many of my speaker friends, I know Peggy Vasquez, one of my dear friends, talks about this a lot, where she says, and Mel Robbins does too in many of her books, the motivational speaker. She says, um, you don't get confidence until you do something. The confidence comes from the doing. And that is very similar to empowerment. It's basically in alignment with confidence, right? You don't get confidence until you do something. Um, it's just a word otherwise. A principle, something you strive for. And I think a lot of assistants that I've talked to over the years really struggle with confidence. But yet when I ask them, okay, well, what actions are you taking in order to, you know, feel that and have that confidence be an outcome? That's where they get lost. Uh, so empowerment is a process. It's not a one-time thing. This is very important too. Empowerment is not entitlement. Let me just repeat that, even though I know you can see it. Empowerment is not entitlement. So, what do I mean by that? People who feel entitled tend to believe that benefits and privileges should come to them automatically, while empowered people achieve success through hard work, reflection, cooperation, and self awareness. So there's that very keen and important differentiation. So entitled people tend to believe that, the benefits and the privileges and the kudos and the credit and everything should just come to them by virtue of the fact that they are an executive or administrative assistant. Not how empowerment works. Empowered people, um, it's a natural byproduct. Success is a natural byproduct because they are doing the work. They're reflecting. They're doing those SWOT analysis. They're cooperating. They're asking questions. They want to learn. They want to feel the confidence, so they take the risk. They step in. They are willing to be a little bit humble. They've got that sense of humility. And that's a really important differentiation to make when it comes to understanding empowerment. True empowerment comes when we convert intention into action. So let that sink in a little bit. This kind of goes back to and relates to what I just talked about with confidence, right? It comes when you convert the intention, in other words, what you're thinking about doing, how you want to feel, how you want to respond, into action, the doing, right? The having the difficult conversation with somebody, taking on the project, figuring it out, um, learning a new software program, learning a new best practice, taking the action. It goes beyond intention. You can have all the intentions in the world, but you're never going to get that confidence, and you're not going to have that empowerment be one of the outcomes unless you turn it and convert it into action. It's not about playing the blame game. Intention is motivated by a growth mindset. The formula of intention into action is really motivated by a growth mindset and recognizing the value that comes from looking at something differently, changing your perspective. It's really very exciting when you really think about it. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the difference between being assertive and being aggressive. This is a big part of empowerment. Um, and people get mixed up with this a little bit. So when we talk about being assertive, we're talking about standing up for yourself, right? It's also about respecting others. Your goal is positive outcomes. It's not about winning and losing, or making someone else feel like they're wrong and you're right. Being assertive is really the practice of stepping into and turning and converting intention into action. Whereas being aggressive is about creating conflict and resentment. Well, that's not the way I would have done that spreadsheet. Um, you know, I wouldn't have done it that way. I That's not the way I would have managed the board meeting. Um, and all that does is create conflict for other people, and it creates resentment. Or you're using that demanding tone. And it's very ineffective because what happens is when you step into being more aggressive, even if it's subconscious and you don't even realize it, what's happening is you are losing credibility. If you are choosing to be aggressive, your credibility has sprung a leak. uh, People will automatically kind of lose their sense of wanting to be in your space, so to speak. And that's what makes it ineffective. So think about this and really pay attention to what the difference is. I've worked with some aggressive assistants in my career, and it is not fun. It's not fun. I didn't have a lot of respect for them, but those assistants that I've worked with over the years that have been assertive, assertive doesn't mean that you have to, be constantly um, behaving and acting like you're a super duper kind person and happy all the time. It simply means you are stepping into a space where you have respect for yourself, you have respect for others, and you have respect for the role. And you're not going to do anything that's going to demean, undermine, or create the wrong perspective of this amazing role of the administrative professional. I hope that you let that sink in a little bit. Whereas those aggressive assistants that I've worked with over the years don't get that. And what's so sad about it is um, they really do the profession harm when they choose to be aggressive and demanding and have that demanding tone. It's a really ineffective way to lead and be wanting to be seen as a leader. Okay, I love this next thought that empowered administrative professionals enter necessary conflicts and target tasks, problems, and situations, but never people. So let me break this down a little bit for us. Empowerment allows us to focus on the work, using that, confidence that we're building by the doing to target the tasks, to focus on the problems, and use effective techniques to manage the tasks, the problems, and the situations. It's not about uh, calling people out or blaming people. There's no judgment involved when it comes to being an empowered administrative professional. There's no drama. There's no gossip. Um, all of these things are essential. It's not about bringing other people down. It's not about you know, uh, pointing the bow and arrow and shooting someone else's credibility, out the window. It's about focusing on the tasks and the problems and the situations and helping other people to recognize how you need to deal with those things in an effective way. And you're not afraid to enter necessary conflicts. Remember, not all conflicts are bad conflicts to have. Not all conflicts are negative. Some conflicts are healthy. Some things are good to sit around a table and sort out. Some things are worth the time and the energy and the investment of emotional intelligence to, figure out. And as Marie Folio says, I've listened to her quite a bit. She's another motivational person, and she talks a lot about everything is figure outable. And that's the approach that we want to take if as an empowered assistant. We want to have that mindset that everything is figure outable. Let's sit down and figure it out. As opposed to blaming someone else because the board meeting got mixed up, or the calendar appointment wasn't right, or the catering was short. Let's figure it out. Let's not blame Susie over here or George over there. We're going to look at the problem, we're going to look at the task, we're going to look at the situation, and we're going to deal with it in an effective way. All right, so what are the building blocks of empowerment then? The first one is, and we can't talk about this enough, right? Just the building block of confidence by the doing. Trust. Empowerment builds trust. When you feel that empowerment that starts and percolates from in here, it is a trust builder. It is a trust builder. It builds cooperation. It builds communication. As we embrace and understand the essence of empowerment, we come to realize that it has to be self-generated. We empower ourselves. And then as we do, all of these building blocks then, start to build a good tower around us, in front of us. Um, Instead of conflict with others. In other words, as communication goes up, that leads to more influence and impact. The more you are an effective, empowered communicator, the more influence you're going to have, the more you are going to be seen as a leader of your administrator and in your workplace. It's really about expansion of self. It's about relational power. It's not about dominion or control. Goes back to, if we went back to this other slide here, about assertive and aggressive, you could easily fill in. Here, being assertive, that's where the empowerment is. That's about expansion of self. It's about relational power, whereas aggressiveness is about dominion and control. So this is just such an interesting concept, and one we really do want to understand as much as possible. All right. So what are the indicators of empowerment? Let's talk about these a little bit. I think these are really important to understand. Go back and make sure I'm on the right one here for myself. The first one is, that you are stepping into that space of empowerment that's starting to percolate up. If you are taking initiative to take on new responsibilities, that you're not shying away. Remember, the confidence comes from the doing. So you're willing to take that initiative to, hey, bring it on. I'm willing to take that task on, even though I'm not super familiar with it. I'd like to take a crack at it. I'd like to really do the homework and do my due diligence and figure it out. You take the initiative to take on new responsibilities. You develop and refine your objectives. In other words, you really think things through. You understand, the relevance of the work that you're doing. The next one is very important, and it's all about having the encouragement of open debate. In other words, you're willing to hear other people's points of view. You're open to other people's ideas. You're willing to share and have a back and forth about a task, a situation, or a problem. And you have a stronger sense of ownership with decision making. So, one of the examples that I can give you here that happened when this was kind of the aha moment for me, when I really started to understand how empowerment works and how it comes from me, is earlier in my career. I worked at a small healthcare company. We had about 150 employees, I guess, and I supported the CEO. He was a young CEO, and he was, just had all kinds of, great ideas. And In a management team meeting once, I would sit in on those management team meetings. He wanted to come up with a brand new mission, vision, and a whole new set of values for the company. And so, we kind of sat around the table, and there were maybe six managers, seven managers in the room, and myself. And so he threw it out to the table and said, "Okay, any ideas on how we might go about this?" And they all kind of piped up with um, what they thought might be a good approach to, a plan to create a new mission, vision, and values. And I just was sitting back listening and just thought, wow, this is I don't know. They're not being very creative. They're just kind of, this is kind of boring. I didn't say anything, but and then after that meeting was over, um I needed to go into my executive's office, the CEO's office, to grab something off his desk or whatever. And he sensed my kind of, I don't know, he must have sensed my body language or something in the meeting because he said something. He said, "Hey, you kind of came out of that meeting, I sensed you were a little frustrated." Now, I had a choice to make there. I could have said, "Gosh, you know what? I it's fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine. Nope, I just have a lot of work to do. So I'm just going to grab this off your desk and get back to work." But I didn't do that. And again, this was like the day of my empowerment, realization. I said, I think there'd be a different way we could go about creating, reaching your objective of creating a new mission, vision, values. And he said, "I want to hear what you think about it." And I thought to myself, okay, remember what I said? He is giving me permission. He's inviting me. He's not necessarily empowering me. He's giving me the permission to empower myself to then share what my idea was. And so I said, well, okay. So he said, "Hey, sit down." So I sat down and I said, "You know what? What if we had some sort of retreat?" The chairman of the board, who happened to be his father, had a really nice cabin, very nice. It was more like a house up on the lake in Northern California. And I said, "Well, what if we planned a retreat and we spent the day up in, it was up at Lake Almanor. It was about an hour away from where we were." And I said, "We could kind of create some different," and I was just kind of talking out loud. "But what if we created some different activities and different, ways to brainstorm and just kind of broke the day up?" And so I just kind of shared this idea. And he leaned back in his chair and he said, "That's a great idea. Let's jump on it. Let's do it." And so he goes, "I want you to pull together your ideas of what you think this day would look like." Okay. Now, that's where I had to take the action, right? At that point, there was no confidence. He had given me this huge responsibility, but there was no confidence yet. It wasn't until I spent the investment of time and energy and creative thinking and critical thinking. And of course, we worked very closely together on it. But we just created this, I gave him my proposal and what I thought maybe the day could look like. I did a lot of research on strategic planning exercises and some fun activities we could do to brainstorm ideas. And it was such an awesome day. I mean, a month later, we were up this house on the lake, and it was just great. And that was my experience of really understanding empowerment. Because from that time on, I knew that I could take action and share ideas and take initiative to take on new responsibilities. So anyway, that's kind of my story about my indicator of empowerment, and it stayed with me ever since. And I've definitely, leaned back into it when I've needed to. All right. Empowered assistants are change agents. They are willing to understand the change that might be happening around them, and they're supportive. It doesn't mean they always agree with what the change might be. Maybe you're getting a new executive, maybe your executive is retired, so you're getting a new one. That's change. So rather than, complaining and whining and, well, the new executive doesn't do things the way the old one does, well, they're not supposed to, they don't have to, and they shouldn't be doing things the same way, right? So empowered assistants are change agents. You're going to figure out what you need to adjust and tweak in order to make that new partnership successful, right? They're self aware. We've talked about that already. I just want to keep bringing that to our attention. Empowered assistants are also not perfectionists. They don't fall into that trap. There is no such thing. You cannot be absolutely perfect at everything. And there has to be a little bit of humility and in there somewhere, because if you are constantly setting yourself up to be perfect at everything, you're going to burn out and you're going to have a lot of anxiety, and you're at some point going to make a mistake that you will never be able to forgive yourself for, right? You think now you're the worst assistant ever. You're never going to be able to bounce back. And so if you can step into that mindset of recognizing that as an empowered assistant, you don't want to be that, having that mindset of being a perfectionist. And they're also curious. One of the most fun workshops I do is about Leonardo da Vinci and how he was such a curious person, and he asked questions about everything around him all the time. And that's what we want to be as empowered assistants. It's not that we're driving people crazy with questions 24/7. It's just that we want to be looking at processes, and maybe there's a better way to do something, or we're just curious about new ways of doing things. And right now with AI, obviously, it's a great time to be curious. That's one thing that we should all be curious about, right? And how we can implement it into our daily work to be not experts at it, but have expertise in it, right? To really understand it, to understand how we can use it in the most effective way. So, those are some of the things that we can be curious about. All right, we talked about that one. Hold on, my finger slipped here. Okay, so here are some ways that we can see empowerment in action. So we've talked about how the confidence comes from the doing. So if you are in this empowerment state, you are able to have self control over your impulses when you get agitated or you're upset about something. It's the ability to work with challenges, practicing that courage and patience. There is the action tendency in relationship to empowerment. You're conscientiously able to calm down. You know what your red zone is. You know what your own triggers are. You know where your icebergs are under the water, right? You know what could sink you real fast. Um, and so that conscientious ability to have that calmness and composure and resilience is a part of empowerment in action. And it's consistent over time. Like I said before, empowerment is gained by practice. It's a work in progress. And, as you start to feel it, as you start to um, do things that enable it to, like, flip the switch, you'll know it, you'll feel it. And like, I came away from that, conversation with the CEO after we talked about the retreat. I just thought, oh my gosh, I was excited. You get excited. You rather than just saying throwing my arms up and just my shoulders up going, it's fine. It's okay. It was nothing, you know, but I had a tweak in my back or something, right? No. I had some ideas and I wanted to I he asked me to share them, so I did. Um the other thing too about empowerment in action is it's not reactive. There's an action tendency, right? So in other words, when there's adversity, when the routine gets really mundane, when there's challenges, those resilient and empowered EAs are able to continue to pursue their goals, to solve those problems, to take that initiative, and to make those rational decisions amid the chaos, right? Amid the challenges. So I hope you're starting to see how this works and how this is such an important aspect of our roles as administrative professionals. So let's talk a little bit about what might challenge our ability to feel empowered. Well, the first one is those unrealistic demands that are often put on us. But I want to just throw this out there. Are they unrealistic in your mind, or are they really unrealistic demands? So you really want to unpack that. What you might think is an unrealistic demand might not be. And that's why it's so important to have that expectation conversation with your executive on a regular basis. Because if those expectations aren't in alignment, they might give you work or a project or a task that you think, holy cow, that's unrealistic. Whereas to them, it's certainly it's in the realm of being an expectation or a realistic demand. Now, there are times, and trust me, I've experienced them, where I feel like I have had some unrealistic demands put on me. And that's when I've had to have those crucial conversations. Maybe it might have to do with your bandwidth or your workload. If you keep saying yes, yes, excuse me, yes, 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 yes to everything without ever talking it through and prioritizing, you might think that you're getting unrealistic demands put on you. The next one is, just sometimes criticism from the manager or even possibly from colleagues that can challenge our ability to feel empowered. Each of these, though, requires going back to the very first slides, right? Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Is the criticism valid? Maybe you did not handle a situation as efficiently or as well as you could. Maybe you rolled your eyes at something and somebody saw it and they're not calling you out, but commenting and saying, "Gosh, that you probably really shouldn't have reacted that way." Um, we definitely want to take the criticism and unpack it and think about it and come to terms with it and ask the right questions. If we don't agree with it, then be willing to ask the questions and get examples and kind of help to break it down and recognize, well, what can I learn from this criticism to help me move forward? Performance pitfalls. Gosh, maybe you're dropping the ball on some things. If that's the case, then that can definitely be a challenge to our empowerment. And I already talked about the unclear expectations. So these can be a cycle. It can be one of them. It can be all of them. Um, but when we feel challenged, that's the time to step back, do the SWOT analysis, spend some time thinking about where you are in your mindset, what is your part in some of the challenges, and what can you tweak, what can you adjust, what can you learn, what types of questions can you ask? Does it require a conversation with your executive? Does it require a conversation with a colleague? Whatever that looks like. But when we're challenged, in order to feel empowered, we have to be willing to do the work. All right. So let's talk a little bit about empowering ourselves by getting to know our manager. So let's go through these quickly here. So building a strong partnership with our executives and managers really is a huge ingredient to the recipe of empowerment. So the first one is, practice that expectation setting. In other words, be in alignment what so that you understand what their expectations of you are and they understand what your expectations of them are, and have that conversation so that you're very, very clear on, how they know you're spending your time and what is the priority and what isn't. Um, don't criticize. Don't criticize your executive in front of other people. You can go home and you can talk to your cat, you can talk to your dog, but don't ever criticize your executive or your manager to other people in the workplace. I guarantee you it will come back to bite you in the rear end, and your credibility will go out the window. So you want to be very, very mindful and very careful of that one. Know your executives' pet peeves. What gets under their skin? What bothers them? What maybe they don't like to have 7:30 meetings scheduled. Maybe they what are their pet peeves? What bugs them? What keeps them up at night? Know what those are. Know what those little things are, those little triggers. um, maybe they don't want to have all of their one-on-ones scheduled in one day. Maybe they don't like to have maybe they want to have a half-hour break in between meetings. um, they just get frustrated if they're late for the very first meeting and that runs long, the whole day's off, right? So I learned that early on in my career. Always do a buffer. If I can in any given day, I will, depending on the circumstances, of course, but I will try not to schedule a back to back to back meetings more than two or three in a row. And if I can, I will put some breathing space in between those. I'll also block out, time if I need to for just, calls and catch up. So, that's a whole nother workshop on calendar management, but just know your executives' pet peeves, just what bugs them. Learn to listen strategically. Now, what do I mean by this? Always have your radar up, always have your ears open to what's happening around you. Listen to how your executive converses with other people. Learn to listen with a very strategic mindset so that you're catching nuances. Maybe he's having a conversation, within earshot of your desk or whatever, and you can tap into a lot. Just learn to read between the lines, and listen for those nuggets that can help you to take initiative, to step into uncomfortable situations and really shine, and look for those opportunities that we talked about. This next one is know when to dial it up, dial it down, or just stop talking. This one's very important. This kind of comes from my whole communication workshop that I do. But a lot of assistants feel like if they get asked a very simple question, that they have to give a dissertation about what happened 6 weeks ago and what led up to this, and then what's going to happen 6 weeks from now. For example, um, in a previous job I was the administrative manager, and I was really trying to coach and mentor one of my team members on this. One day, her executive came out, and this is when we were all in the office pre-COVID. And he came out to her desk and said, "Hey, are we still holding that 4 o'clock meeting?" Her answer started by, "Well, 6 weeks ago, George wasn't sure if we needed the 4 o'clock meeting today. So we put it on the calendar, but now we're not sure if we still need it. Oh my gosh. It's a yes or no question. Yes, the 4 o'clock meeting is happening, or no, the 4 o'clock meeting is no longer on the calendar. Then, if you need to follow up with any sort of conversation about it, fine. But she lost him in the first 10 seconds of the dissertation, the response. So just know when to speak up, know when to kind of dial it down a little bit, or just simply not talk at all. Just be observing and listening and paying attention to what's happening around you. And then the last one is you can really be empowered by getting creative with huddles. I know that this is a huge topic of conversation, and in this particular session, I don't have time to, deep dive into it. But all I will say here is find ways to get creative with your huddles or your one-on-ones. Um, this is something I hear from assistants all the time. They keep getting canceled. It's the first thing that comes off. Okay, I get it. It's happened to me as well, and I've had to cancel one-on-ones. So just take that accountability and be empowered to not wait for your executive to say, oh yeah, put that one-on-one back on the calendar. You put it back on the calendar. You get creative with the huddle, whether it's walking to the elevator down to their car, whether you meet 15 minutes in the morning or 15 minutes in the afternoon, whether you're fortunate to have an hour every week, maybe you only have an hour every month, whatever it looks like. But just remember that it is an opportunity. It is one of those boxes to really step into that space of being prepared, to be their eyes and ears, to go through the calendar with very strategically, to share with them, maybe concerns that you have, whatever it might be. What are the hits and misses for the month? But get creative. Don't just assume that if you have 15 minutes that you're just going to sit there and wait to be told what to do. That is not how an empowered assistant works, right? They are your meetings. That's a lesson I learned from that same CEO. They're your meetings. So manage them creatively. All right. Just a few strategies and tools here to finish up. These are just some bonus things here. So the first success tool is, we've talked about it, looking for those opportunities. Be ready. Listen and observe. Share your skills with other people. Don't put criminal tape around your work. Be willing to share. Be willing to teach someone else. If you have a new assistant that's come on board, make sure you're the one reaching out to them and helping them to be successful. Step up and get involved. Also, be that culture champion. Be the person, be the assistant that really rallies. And maybe if you don't have a group that gets together, you form one. A lot of assistants now, because so many people are remote, there isn't that same connection. There isn't the sharing of seeing people in the office every day anymore. So if you're missing that, then take that initiative, see that as an opportunity, and maybe start having a weekly or bi-weekly Zoom meeting, chat, whatever, and get everybody together and grab a Diet Coke or a cup of coffee, and everybody, you know, hop on and, hey, how can I help you? Or, maybe it morphs into something more formal where you have a speaker come in, or you've got somebody from IT that comes in and shares Google tips or the latest in Outlook, whatever. Get creative, but take the initiative. Be that culture champion. It's a great way um, to really be empowered and practice empowerment. Reach out, be that cross collaborator, right? Network with other departments. Empowered EAs are visible EAs, and you can be a visible EA even as a remote EA. You just have to get creative and be that culture champion. All right, the next one is beware of those self-defeating thinking traps. Thinking it's all or nothing. It's either a great idea or a lousy idea. There's no in between. It doesn't, not even worth having a conversation about. Or overgeneralizing things or awfulizing things. That's the worst idea I've ever heard. That idea is never going to work. People labeling. Maybe there's a new assistant that's being starting in your department that's coming over from another department, and you've heard from other assistants, oh, she's kind of a diva. Oh, I don't think, she's not very approachable. Well, you don't want to start any sort of relationship with a new team member with a people label on them, right? You formulate your own perspective, your own relationship with them based on your emotional maturity and ability to build a relationship with people. And then, beware of that self defeating thinking trap of being a mind reader. It's impossible. We're not mind readers. We are anticipators. We are proactive thinkers, but we are not mind readers. So beware of those self defeating thinking traps. We talked about making one on ones creative, and here's just a few ideas to make them really high leverage time. This is one way that you can really feel empowered. So focus on that active versus passive planning. Prioritize, make the most of the time you have, whether it's 5 minutes, 50 minutes, or 90 minutes. Don't rely on your memory. Write things down. Keep, a running agenda in OneNote, however you want to do it. Keep a pulse on changing priorities. What's happening in the department? What's going on in the company that your executive might benefit from knowing about? Anticipate, practice that proactive thinking. Know what to say no to, or to ask relevant questions about the priority of. Don't just say, yes, I'll take that on, if you already know that your bandwidth is at its stretched. And be accountable for your schedule in order to meet your executive's needs. I don't think as assistants we often pay enough attention to that. Don't stretch yourself so thin, volunteering for this and volunteering for that and helping out with the company picnic or whatever it might be. Be accountable for your schedule so that you are available to meet your executive's needs. All right. So here are some, as we finish up here are some strategies that you can develop when it comes to empowerment. Observe reactions from other people. I talked about how important it is to just have that sense of humility about yourself and your work and how much you know and what you don't know. Take your own temperature from time to time. This is really important. Just step back, put the temperature thermometer in your own mouth and take your own temperature. How are you doing? It's not always about everybody else. You got to gauge yourself. And then, of course, be action oriented. This is a great idea, this 515 report. And I want to just really quickly go over this. This is about an exercise that I have put into practice probably most of my career. This is my key to kind of maintaining my empowerment and staying on that empowerment path. And it's a great way to promote yourself diplomatically. So what it is it's a 515 report. In other words, it covers the 5 days of the week, and it only takes about 15 minutes. And what you do is at the end of the week, or it could be Friday or it could be Monday, and sometimes I'm not super religious about it as far as consistency, but I really try and do this on a regular basis. And I answer these 4 questions. How have I demonstrated the company mission this week? How have I, practiced the company values? Have I saved the company money? Did I reach out to a new employee? Did I take a new assistant to lunch? How have I demonstrated the company mission and values this week? What areas of professional development did I hit? Did I listen to a webinar? Did I read a great book? Did I read an article from the Harvard Business Review? Have I signed up for a conference? What areas of professional development did I cover? And sometimes, a week might go by and maybe you didn't do anything in that area. That's okay. It's not about beating ourselves up. And then where can I use my manager's help in getting something done, or someone else's help in getting something done? Where do I need help? And then what fires did I put out or did I prevent this week? There's always something, right? And when we get ready to do our performance review, how many times do we sit there and think, I know back in June, I think it was. Oh, maybe it was March. I think I did something really cool. I think I really put out a big fire, but what was that? If you're doing the 515 report on a regular basis, it's an easy way to go back, and you can keep this digitally. You can keep it, a hard copy, however you want. It doesn't matter. And don't get caught up in feeling like, oh my gosh, I didn't do my 515 report this week. It's okay. It's just an idea to try and implement on a regular basis because it really does help you to promote yourself diplomatically. All right. And then create your own to-do list. You know what? Take some time we always think about our to-do list. Well, I am a huge advocate for writing down a good to-do list. What did I hit out of the park? Where am I really doing okay? Patting myself on the back, giving myself a little credit. Did my executive go on a really extensive business trip and not one glitch? She had everything you know, everything went smoothly. That's a ta-da, yahoo for me, right? Create your own ta-da list and have some fun with it. And this next one is a start, stop, continue exercise. So this is all about, again, these are just helpful ideas. Use one, use them all, don't use any. This is an exercise I've been sharing in my workshops for years, probably at least 20 years. So the start is, what could or should you start doing to improve a process, a relationship, your own job performance? Are there some simple things that you could start doing that you could implement sooner than later that could help you to feel more empowered, to step into that and take action space so that you build the confidence, right? What should you stop doing? What should you stop doing that is preventing you from being your best? Feeling productive or managing tasks efficiently? Are you prone to a little bit too much gossip? Are you prone to stepping into too much drama? Are you consistently running late to work? Um, are you overthinking things? What are some things that you should stop doing? And then what should you continue to do that's working that will help you continue to feel empowered and create that continuous harmony and job satisfaction? If something's working, don't do anything with it, right? If you're knocking it out of the park on something, keep doing it. Those are the things that help us feel like we're okay, right? We're doing okay. So this start, stop, continue is a great exercise to use. Oh, maybe even along with the SWOT, right? If you complete your SWOT, you could have a start, stop, continue as a kind of a follow-up exercise based on your strengths or your gaps and the opportunities. You could maybe create a really powerful start, stop, continue exercise that could help you to continue to evolve as an assistant. It's a great exercise. And when you need to, just move that frame a little bit, reframe when necessary to gain a fresh perspective. If we moved this big frame over to the right a little bit, it would be a completely different, scene in the frame, right or left. Sometimes we have to do that in the workplace. Sometimes we have to do that with people. Sometimes we have to do that with our executives. Sometimes we have to do that with situations and tasks. If it's really a challenging task, I find that if I just step back, move the frame a little bit. Oh, okay. Now I can get back to it. So sometimes it's just about gaining a fresh perspective. And then last but not least, maintain your credibility at all costs. Do whatever you need to do to maintain that credibility, to keep that credibility bucket full. Like this lighthouse that has this beautiful beacon of light where people feel safe and secure as they're, passing through or passing by. And like this massive sequoia tree, the redwood tree, that's how I picture and imagine integrity and credibility. And as an empowered assistant, that's very important to me. I don't think you can feel and be an empowered assistant without striving to maintain your credibility. All right, take control of your professional and personal life by being confident. Accept those challenges as opportunities to grow. Continue to constantly learn and expand. Purposefully create opportunity in every situation. Find that inner circle of support. Set some stretch goals and accept projects that challenge you. These are all great ways to feel empowered. Take pride in the administrative profession. Celebrate your accomplishments with enthusiasm. It's needed. It's so needed in the workplace today. And then, last but not least, be empowered. Be a leader. Step into that space of empowerment. Follow the path. And let me leave you with my email. My email is lisa@lisa-olsen, olsen.com. Again, that's Lisa, Lisa, at Lisa, Lisa-olsen, olsen.com. So reach out to me. Appreciate you listening. And again, empowerment is not going to show up on our doorstep. It'll come from day to day practice and taking action. So thanks for joining. Take care. Bye bye.